It was just another peaceful evening in my little seaside cottage with the waves murmuring secrets to the shore. But what my son Jake shared that night, well, it changed everything. It still lingers with me like a soft current that keeps tugging at my heart. That's how it began for me. One ordinary twilight in my little cottage by the sea, where the waves murmur secrets to the shore. But what my son Jake shared that night, it lingers still, a gentle current pulling at the edges of my thoughts, reminding me of the profound beauty hidden in the simplest of truths. I've held it close ever since, like a well-worn letter from home. Before I unfold this for you, pause for a second. Where are you settling in tonight? A bustling metropolis with lights buzzing like fireflies, a sleepy village wrapped in fog, or somewhere tucked between the wild and the tame? Drop it in the comments. I adore picturing you all there, scattered like stars, tuning into these whispers from my world. I'm 59 these days, and my rhythm of life weaves together the steady comforts of routine, tending my herb garden at dawn, or losing myself in a dog-eared novel by the hearth. You know, those serendipitous sparks that remind you the heart never quite retires from wonder. That particular evening unfolded without fanfare. The sun had dipped low over the cliffs, painting the sky in strokes of rose and indigo that filtered through the lace curtains of my sunroom. I'd been rinsing the remnants of a solitary supper, herbichons and chamomile, when the faint groan of the garden gate announced a visitor. It was my son Jake, fresh from his shift at the harbor office. His woolen scarf still knotted loosely around his neck, flecks of sea salt dusting his boots. "Hey, Gran," he said, his old nickname for me slipping out like a secret handshake. Right away, I sensed the undercurrent in his tone. It was hushed, deliberate, the kind of pause that speaks volumes before a single word lands. Jake's always carried a quiet depth about him, a thinker who measures his steps. But this felt different, as though he'd been turning phrases over in his mind, like smooth stones from the beach. I set the teapot down with a soft clink and turned to him, the room glowing in the amber haze of the table lantern, its light catching the faint lines of worry etched around his eye. The air held the faint tang of brine from outside, mingling with the earthy notes of my drying lavender bundles hanging by the window. He eased into the wicker chair across from me, not shrugging off his coat just yet, his fingers drumming a subtle tattoo on the armrest as if summoning resolve. We eased in with the small talk that oils the wheels of any gathering, his latest escapade chasing down a misplaced shipment of fishing nets, the quirky new barista at the quayside cafe who'd burned the espresso just right, the rugby match he'd half-watched on his lunch break. I nodded along, murmuring encouragements, but beneath it all, a stillness gathered like the calm before the tide turns. His glances kept drifting to me, then away, echoing those long-ago afternoons when he'd fidget in this very spot, confessing a scraped knee or a playground slight with the gravity of world-ending news. At last he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. There's something that's been brewing in me for a while now. I wasn't sure when to let it out. But sitting here with the waves humming like they do, it feels like the right time. His words settled between us, fragile as sea glass, and I felt my pulse quicken, not with dread, but with the tender gravity of being chosen for such trust. I drew up the chair beside his, my palm pressing flat against the driftwood table, its weathered knots a map of storms weathered together. The wood's cool grain grounded me, a silent ally in the moment. "Jake," I replied, my tone even but laced with that instinctive softness reserved for the ones we cradle closest. "Whatever's stirring, I'm right here. Let it flow." He lifted his gaze, the lantern's glow turning his hazel eyes to liquid gold, and in them I glimpsed the flicker of unshed emotion. "I need you to hear this. You've been my anchor through it all, even now when I'm supposed to have my sea legs under me. You're the one soul I can drift to without the fear of rough waters or judgment crashing in. Lately, I've been navigating some hidden currents, doubts that pull at me in the dead of night. And it's your steady light that's kept me from going under." The room held its breath with us. Beyond the glass, a gull wheeled against the deepening dusk, its cry a distant echo, while the rhythmic sigh of the surf whispered through the cracks in the old pane. This wasn't a thunderclap revelation or a cry for rescue. It was subtler, more vital. a grown son extending a lifeline of raw gratitude, inviting his mother into the uncharted depths of his heart. A swell of feeling rose in me, bittersweet as autumn fog, pride in his courage, sorrow for the burdens he'd shouldered alone, and a fierce joy in being seen as more than memory's echo. I bridged the space between us, folding my hand over his. His skin was chilled from the coastal breeze, yet his grip held the unyielding strength of roots delving deep. We stayed locked like that, palms aligned, and in the pulse of it, the chasm of years, from his tousled-haired toddler days chasing crabs on the strand to this man mapping his own horizons, folded into a singular, shimmering now. From there, the evening unspooled like a well-tied knot finally loosening. Our voices flowed, unhurried through the glowing lantern light. He unburdened tales of the shadows dogging his steps, the ambitions he'd tucked away like forgotten treasures. The whispers of what-ifs that echoed in empty hours after the day's clamor faded. I held space for him first, a quiet harbor where his words could dock without hurry, letting him know the wait didn't have to be solitary. In that sunroom, with the lantern's hum and the ocean's eternal lullaby underscoring us, we carved out a sanctuary of unvarnished truth and tenderness. Later, as I walked him back through the dew-kissed garden path to the gate, the mist had woven into a silken veil, beating on the roses like tiny pearls. He pulled me into an embrace that lingered, his heartbeat a steady drum against my ear, syncing with the sea's pulse. When the gate clicked shut behind him, I remained there under the stars' watchful gaze, his confession curling through me like the scent of salt-kissed earth after rain. Earthy alive. I couldn't have foreseen in that instant how his unguarded words would refract the light I cast on him or on the woman gazing back from the mirror each dawn. But a subtle realignment hummed in the air, a fresh tether of intimacy, a mutual reverence blooming like night jasmine, and the faint stirrings of my own uncharted voyage. Dawn broke the next day with a hush that wrapped the cottage like a shawl. I brewed my morning ritual, strong black tea laced with a whisper of honey, but the steam rising from the pot carried an edge of poignancy, as if the leaves themselves remembered the night's confession. Seated at the table where we'd communed, I traced the table's whirls with my fingertips, evoking the echo of his hand beneath mine. For so long I'd harbored quiet vigils for him, the mother's eternal watch, not tethered to tempests, but to the simple ache of loving from afar. Yet I'd never dreamed he'd sail back to my shore with such open sails, the hours blurred in a gentle reverie, airing the linens on the clothesline, where the breeze off the water carried hints of kelp and freedom, sketching idle patterns in my journal by the window. The gull's calls a feathered chorus tuning the wireless to a station playing wistful folk tunes that tugged at heartstrings long dormant. Each task shimmered with newfound luster, as if his vulnerability had polished the mundane to a soft gleam. My mind wandered to Jake as a lad, scampering home along the pebbled path from school, his satchel swinging wild, face alight with the thrill of discovered shells or tales of tidal pools teeming with life. Now a man forging his own currents, yet still drawn inexorably to this hearth. As twilight crept in again, the telephone trilled like a boy bell. His voice came through clear but laced with that same velvet earnestness. "Gran, would it be all right if I swung by tomorrow? There's more tide I'd like to turn over with you." My yes was immediate, a reflex of the heart, but in the quiet click of the receiver, I lingered, hand set warm in my palm. No fret furrowed my brow. Instead, a cocktail of expectancy and profound thanks swirled within me, like awaiting a letter from a distant beloved, certain of its balm. Tomorrow came cloaked in slate skies in a brisk nor'wester, the sort that urges one to kindle a blaze and let the world unwind at a languid pace. I set a pot of chowder to bubble on the range, rich with clams from the morning market and threads of saffron that perfumed the air like sunlit dreams. When Jake appeared at the door, he bore not his usual empty hands, but a humble posy of sea thrift and wildflowers. "These caught my eye on the walk over," he said with a shy grin, nestling them into a cobalt vase on the sill. The gesture disarmed me. He'd never been one for such flourishes, at least not in my direction, and it kindled a hearth glow in my core. We sucked in companionable quiet at first, the ladle dipping into bowls with rhythmic assurance, the chowder's warmth chasing the chill from our bones. As the light ebbed to a bruised purple and the cottage settled into evening repose, Jake's words began to crest once more. He spoke of a crossroads he'd skirted for seasons, the pull to abandon the steady harbor desk for a venture of his own, a small boatyard where he could craft vessels from salvaged wood, a passion sketched in notebooks since his university days amid sketches of hulls and sails. "I've been adrift with it," he confessed, his timbre low but resolute, vulnerability threading through like foam on a wave. "Terrified of capsizing, of letting down the fleet, or worse, of drifting so far from my own compass that I forget the stars I once chased." I leaned in, the lanterns flickered dancing shadows across his earnest features, evoking the gangly youth who'd once balanced on driftwood logs, dreaming aloud of oceans unconquered. "Jake," I murmured, "do you recall those summer dusks when you'd unfurl your charts on the porch, plotting courses to Phantom Isles with nothing but a stick and sand? This is your grander map unfolding. The fear, it's the wind filling your sails, urging you toward horizons that matter." A quiet chuckle escaped him, the knots in his frame unraveling like rope under skilled hands. "You always spin it into poetry," he said, his eyes crinkling with that boyish spark. "Makes me think I might not be chasing shadows after all." I shook my head fierce in my certainty. "Not shadows. Lighthouses, and bravery isn't the absence of gales. It's charting through them, knowing the shore welcomes you back." We lingered long after the chowder grew tepid, a beeswax taper between us casting golden pools on the tablecloth. Outside, the moon silvered the dunes, etching ethereal patterns on the glass. Time seemed to stretch its canvas, granting us breaths unhurried and deep. In those exchanges, I wasn't merely tending to his tempests. I was rediscovering my own archipelago. The dreamer I'd shelved amid life's relentless tides, the elder now awakening to the truth that horizons expand with every shared sunset. When he rose to depart, his embrace enveloped me like a squall's warm front, prolonged and wordless, as if gestures could convey what language faltered at. "Gran," he breathed into my hair. It's more lifeline than I deserve." But I knew its measure in the hush that followed his footfalls, fading down the path, and the quickened tattoo of my pulse. In the salt-tinged tears, I let trace unhurried paths down my cheeks. These twilight harbors weren't solely mending his course. They were recalibrating mine, unveiling the woman still vibrant beneath the patina of years, receptive, resilient, rediscovering her own uncharted waters through the mirror of his trust. As I doused the lanterns and ascended the creaking stairs, anticipation bloomed like dawn's first light. What further seas might we navigate together, unnamed but beckoning? In the weeks that trailed like a comet's tail, our encounters wove into the fabric of my days, becoming cherished boys amid the ebb of errands and solitary sketches. Jake's arrivals, heralded by the gate's familiar creak, ushered in respites, where the clamor of coastal life receded to a distant roar. We'd convene in the sunroom as dusk draped its velvet cloak, me with a platter of shortbread dusted in sugar like fresh snow, Im with tales tumbling forth like spilled pearls. I found myself counting the hours till these interludes, his nearness a balm unexpected in its profundity, reaffirming that bonds like barnacles on ancient halls deepen with time's patient lap. One tempestuous eve, when the gale clawed at the shutters and rain lashed the panes in silver sheets, blurring the lighthouse's beam to a hazy halo, Jake appeared at the door, sodden but serene. He paused in the threshold, peeling away his oilskin with deliberate grace, droplets tracing rivulets down the floorboards. I observed him the way the storm had plastered his dark curls to his brow, evoking a wilder version of the child who'd once dashed through downpours, laughing defiance at the clouds. And a quiet radiance kindled within me, not in fluttering sentiment, but in the profound grace of witnessed presence, of unwavering faith. "Gran," he ventured at length, claiming his seat with the sun-fed cushions. "Welcome. Your words from our last drift about fear as the edge of import, they've been my North Star. I've come to see I've not just shied from the venture, but from immersing in the full swell of living, the exhilarating crests, the vertiginous troughs, the in-betweens where certainty dissolves." I settled opposite, cradling my mug, its steam veiling between us as I absorbed his candor. Empathy tightened my throat like a rising swell. But that's the voyage's truest thrill," I replied, voice a soothing undertone. "We armor ourselves against the world's gaze, curating facades till we misplace the art of mere being in those raw, unscripted moments that are unequivocally ours." His lips curved into a subdued arc, the furrows of fret easing from his brow like receding foam. Spot on. And it's here in this nook with you that I reclaim it. No need for flawless phrasing or concealing the fog-shrouded bits of me. Our eyes locked, and in his depths I beheld the continuum, the cherub I'd lulled with sea shanties, the adolescent I'd studied through squalls, now a mariner bearing his sextant of truths. I spanned the table, my hand alighting on his like a gull on still waters, familiar terrain, yet electric with emergent insight. I harbor that same sanctuary in you, I confessed, the admission a released breath to voice the unvarnished to be beheld. He leaned in, his timbre dipping to a near whisper, laced with diffidence. Gran, there are nights I ponder if I've moored myself too tightly against the world, letting trepidation helm too many courses. Yet with you, I can avow my charts are incomplete, and that's not fracture. It's freedom. You're in good company, I soothed, my words a gentle current. We all navigate such voids. And granting another berth in your uncharted bays, that's the pinnacle of fortitude. The night unfurled its tapestry around us, hours coiling like kelp in a tranquil cove. I unearthed anecdotes long beached, fleeting tempests of my youth, regrets glimpsed like mirages on the horizon, wisdoms gleaned from joy's lulls and sorrow's surges. He attended with the grave attentiveness of a true wayfarer, offering no verdict, only the gift of undivided now. Through these silences, I wasn't merely charting his stars. I was realigning mine, reconnecting with the siren I'd muted amid matrimonial tides and maternal gales, embracing the elder's prerogative to evolve unbound. When he at last charted his leave, the squall had ebbed, bequeathing air crisp as new canvas. I lingered in the portal, tracing his silhouette dissolving into the moonlit dunes, a reverent hush enveloping me. Another subtle shift had crusted between us, a fortified alliance, a reciprocal nod to frailty's forge and resilience's bloom. I latched the door with reverence, permitting the cottage's silence to unfold me like a favorite cloak. Padding back to the sunroom, a new awareness stirred. Our communion had transcended lexicon, manifesting as a vital essence, serene, unyielding, beckoning us toward vistas as yet uncharted, intuited in our marrow's quiet song. The ensuing days thrummed with an unanticipated buoyancy, my senses attuned to nuances once overlooked, the late afternoon sun gilding the shell wind chimes with soft fire, the stove's contented purr as supper simmered, the zephyrs caressing through the casements bearing tales from distant coast. Each nuance resonated with amplified import, echoes of dialogues that had subtly redrawn my geography of Jake and, astonishingly, of self. That subsequent evening, Jake materialized unencumbered, save for a weathered journal clutched like a talisman. His demeanor was a tranquil inlet. Our squares had shed their initial hesitance, settling into an innate cadence we'd both craved unwittingly. The sunroom brimmed with the yeasty allure of hearth-baked oatcakes, golden crusted and studded with dried cranberries as I decanted jasmine tea into